Far away from the center of the galaxy there was a quiet planet named Rhinar Prime. It was once a place full of light and songs and laughter. The Rhinar people were proud and peaceful. They built shining cities and towers that touched the sky. Their oceans were blue and calm. Their children played under twin suns and the sound of wind carried joy. But then came the war, the great galactic war. That no one asked for, it lasted many years, and left only ruins behind when the war ended. The powerful races rebuilt quickly. They had resources and allies, but the smaller ones were forgotten. Among them were the Rhinar. They were told that help would come, but no ship ever came, and soon their world began to die. Their machines stopped working, and the crops failed, the air became dry, and the ground cracked. Families gathered in the ruins and prayed for rescue, but the stars stayed silent. The Galactic Council declared Rhinar Prime lost, too expensive to save, too far from trade routes, too little benefit to the galaxy, so the people of Rhinar were left behind, waiting for someone who would never come. Time passed. The old died. The young grew weak. The songs of the Rhinar turned into whispers, and their towers became empty shells filled with dust and ghosts of memory. The leaders of the Rhinar gathered in what remained of their council hall. Their eyes were hollow. They spoke in broken voices about ending it all, about giving up. For what use was hope when the universe had forgotten them? There was no signal, no response to their calls, only silence. Then one day, while the winds howled outside and the last energy cells flickered, a small sound came through the old signal receiver. It was faint like a breath, but it was there. The technician thought it was noise at first, but then words came through, words in a strange accent that none of them had heard before. The voice said, "We heard you repeat. We heard you. This is Solace, one of the United Human Fleet. Please respond if anyone is alive." The room froze. No one spoke for a long time. The technician replayed the message again and again, thinking it was a dream. They did not know what a human was. The Rhinar had heard stories of a young race from the Sol system who had only recently joined the galaxy. They were said to be reckless and emotional creatures, quick to fight, but also quick to laugh. The idea that one of them had found this forgotten place seemed impossible. Yet the signal came again, stronger and clearer. The same calm voice, calling across the stars. "We are picking up your distress beacon. We are approaching coordinates 329 by 79. If you can hear this, hold on, help is coming." The Rhinar elders looked at each other, afraid to believe they had been betrayed. So many times before, that hope felt like a cruel joke. Some said it was a trap, that pirates were imitating a rescue signal to steal what little they had left. Others said it was another cruel trick from the council to watch them beg again. But deep inside every heart a small spark flickered. Maybe, just maybe this time, someone meant those words. For 3 long days they waited. The signal grew stronger. The skies above Rhinar Prime, which had been empty for years, suddenly shimmered with a light that was not from their suns. A ship appeared. It was not large or elegant like those of the council, but strong and full of purpose. It descended slowly, cutting through the dusty clouds like a silver bird. Its hull bore strange letters in a language few could read, but the symbol was simple. A blue circle with a small white star in the center. Humans had come. The Rhinar gathered at the edge of the ruined city. They watched as the ship landed and a ramp opened from within. Stepped figures in gray, suits, their faces hidden behind clear helmets. They carried crates and tools. They did not raise weapons. They did not demand tribute. Instead, they knelt beside the weak and offered water, food, and medicine. One of them took off her helmet. A woman, with tired eyes and a gentle smile, she looked around at the silent crowd and said, "We are here to help." No one moved at first. The Rhinar leader, a thin old man with pale skin, stepped forward, his voice trembling. He asked, "Why? Why would you come here?" "No one comes here. No one cares." The human woman looked at him for a long time before answering, "Because you asked for help, and we heard you, that is all." The old man could not understand. He had lived too long under the rule of cold logic and cruel politics. He did not believe in kindness without reason. Yet here stood strangers risking their lives to save a dying race, and they wanted nothing in return. The humans worked all night. They set up tents. They powered old machines. They purified water. and shared food. The Reinar watched in silence, some still afraid that this was a dream that would vanish by morning. But when dawn came, the fires still burned, and the smell of cooked food filled the air. Children who had not smiled in years laughed. As they tasted bread for the first time, the humans played music from small speakers, simple, soft tunes that filled the empty city with warmth. It was not just food and medicine they brought, it was hope. And that was something the Reinar had forgotten. The Ao, captain of Solace One, sat with the Reinar leader near the broken council hall. She listened as he told the story of their fall, how the galaxy abandoned them, how their signals went unanswered, how even their allies turned away. She said nothing for a long time, only looking at the stars. Then she said softly, "My people know what it feels like to be ignored, to be told that you are too small to matter. When we reached for the stars, no one helped us either. We built everything with our own hands, and we promised that if we ever found others left behind, we would not turn away." That night the Reinar elders met again. But this time their eyes had light in them. They spoke of rebuilding, of teaching the young again, of planting seeds once more. They still feared the council. They knew that helping humans might bring punishment. But for the first time, they did not care, because they were not alone anymore. The humans had crossed half the galaxy to stand with them, and that meant more than any law written by distant rulers. As the suns rose over Reinar Prime, the broken city began to breathe again. Fires burned where there had been ashes, voices rose where there had been silence, and the Reinar people looked up at the sky, not with fear, but with gratitude. High above in orbit, the human ship sent a final message to its command center. "They have survived. We are staying to help." In the quiet that followed, the Reinar leader stood among his people and looked at the human camp lights glowing. In the dark he whispered to himself, perhaps the universe had not forgotten them after all. Perhaps it was only waiting for the right kind of heart to listen and answer their call. And somewhere above, in the deep cold of space, a small blue planet called Earth glowed softly, as if proud of its children who had dared to care when no one else would. The human ship Solace One stayed on Reinar Prime for many days. Its crew worked without rest. They repaired water lines and shared power cells. They taught the Reinar how to use small machines to clean the air and grow food again. The old people could not believe it. The children followed the humans everywhere, asking questions about their world. The humans laughed and answered with patience, showing pictures of earth-green forests, blue oceans, and white clouds. The Reinar listened like children listening to fairy tales. They had never seen such a place so full of life. Captain Arden watched her crew work and felt proud. They were far from home, and yet they acted as if this broken world was their own. They called the Reinar brothers and sisters and treated them like family at night. She would sit outside the camp looking at the stars, wondering how long before the Galactic Council noticed. Their actions, they had broken a major rule. Humans were not allowed to interfere with a restricted world. But she could not turn back. She remembered her own childhood on Earth when floods destroyed her town, and strangers came from far away to help. That memory guided her. Now she had sworn to do the same whenever she could. The Reinar leader, whose name was Halrin, spent much time with Captain Arden. He had lived through the fall of his people. He had watched friends and family die. He spoke slowly, and with sadness he told her about the time when Reinar ships flew proudly in the sky, when their people were respected across the stars. Then he told her how the council decided that the Reinar system had no value after the war. Their world was left to rot while the rich worlds grew richer. She listened in silence, and when he finished, she said softly that the same kind of cruelty existed everywhere, but it only survived because good people stayed silent, and she told him that humanity had chosen not to stay silent anymore. One morning, a signal came from orbit. It was from another human ship called Aurora 7. It had been sent to bring more supplies and people. Soon the sky above Reinar Prime was filled with light as the second ship arrived. The Reinar stood and watched in awe as humans unloaded crates of food, medicine, and construction tools. They had not seen so many visitors in decades, and yet these new humans treated them like family. They smiled, shook hands, and worked together soon. Old streets were cleared, broken walls repaired, and water began to flow again from the fountains that had been dry for years. The humans taught the Reinar how to build small shelters using simple tools. They showed them how to make clean fire using Fuel from plants, they even helped the children learn basic human words so they could speak easily. One little Reinar girl named Ari became friends with a human mechanic named Thomas. She followed him everywhere. He taught her how to fix small engines, and she would bring him pieces of metal she found in the ruins one evening. She asked him why he came here when he could live on a safe world. He looked at her and said, "Because no one deserves to be forgotten." Her small eyes filled with tears, and she hugged him tightly. That moment was seen by others, and it stayed in their hearts. News of what was happening on Reinar Prime spread quickly across the nearby system. Some alien traders began whispering about humans helping a dead world. The Galactic Council received the report with anger. They called it a violation of interstellar law. They sent a message to the human fleet demanding that all ships leave Reinar Prime immediately, but the humans ignored it instead. They sent a message back that said, "We will not abandon those in need. If you want to stop us, you will have to come and take us." The Council was not used to being defied by such a young species. They saw humanity as reckless children who did not understand the rules, but they did not yet understand that humans followed a rule of their own. Days passed, and the bond between the humans and Reinar grew stronger. The humans built small gardens and invited the Reinar to plant seeds with them. Laughter returned to the city. Fires burned bright at night, and stories were shared under the twin suns. Captain Arden often walked through the camp listening to songs in mixed voices, some human and some Reinar, blending into something new. It felt like the birth of hope itself. But not everyone in the galaxy was happy about it. Far away in the capital of the Council, a meeting was held among the leaders of powerful races. They feared that if humans continued helping forgotten worlds, others might start asking questions about their own corruption. They decided to send warning ships to Reinar Prime to remind humanity of their place in the galactic order on Reinar Prime. The humans soon detected strange signals from space, small patrol ships moving closer. Captain Arden gathered her crew and told them that trouble was coming, but none of them spoke of leaving. Instead, they prepared to protect what they had built. The Reinar were afraid. They had seen war before, and they did not want it again. But the humans told them not to fear. They said no one would harm them, as long as they were there. Thomas the mechanic stood on the walls of the city with his tools in hand. He smiled at Ari and said, "This time we stand together." She nodded and ran to help carry supplies. Even the children wanted to help. They had learned courage from watching the humans. When the first Council ship entered orbit, it sent a message demanding that the humans leave at once. Captain Arden replied calmly, saying that they were only providing aid and had no weapons or plans of conquest. But the Council ship warned that defiance would lead to consequences. Still, the humans refused to move. The Reinar gathered around the human camp holding hands, their eyes bright. With both fear and pride, they knew that for the first time in many years, someone was willing to stand beside them no matter the cost. Night fell, and the skies were full of tension, but no battle came. The Council ships watched from orbit, unable to attack openly without proof of wrongdoing. They sent more messages, but the humans continued their work below, repairing power lines, digging wells, helping the weak. Every act of kindness became a quiet form of rebellion. It was not just aid anymore. It was a message to the entire galaxy that said, "We care." Weeks later, the Council ships withdrew, unable to justify action. But they left spies to report what was happening, and soon the story spread to other forgotten worlds. Species that had been left behind heard about the humans who came when no one else would. They began sending their own faint signals of distress, hoping that somewhere a human ship would hear them on. Reinar Prime life slowly returned. The Reinar began to rebuild their homes using both their old designs and human ideas. They built schools where both species taught side by side. They even created a shared flag, a circle split into two halves. One blue and one silver joined together at the center, symbolizing unity. The humans hung that flag beside their own. Wherever they worked, it became a sign that no one was alone. Captain Arden sent reports to Earth describing everything that was happening. The leaders of humanity were divided. Some feared that helping the Reinar would bring war with the Council, but others believed it was the right thing to do. In the end, the people of Earth supported the mission. They sent more volunteers, doctors, teachers, and engineers. Humanity had made its choice, and it would not go back. One evening, as the twin suns set and the sky turned gold, Captain Arden stood beside Halrin on a hill overlooking the city that was once dead, now filled with light and life. He said to her that his people would never forget what humans had done. She smiled and told him that one day they would do the same for someone else because that is how hope survives. He looked at her and said, "Perhaps the galaxy needs more humans." She laughed softly and said, "Perhaps it just needs more hearts like yours." That night the humans celebrated with their Rhinar friends. They shared food, danced and sang together. The music echoed through the valley, and for the first time in many years, Rhinar Prime was alive again. The stars above seemed to shine brighter as if watching over them, and in that moment, every human there knew that they had done something greater than victory. They had given back what the galaxy had taken away. They had given back hope. The days on Rhinar Prime became warmer as the humans and Rhinar worked side by side. Rebuilding their world fields began to bloom again, and small streams flowed through the city once more. The smell of life filled the air where, once there had only been dust. Children ran through the streets laughing and calling out to their human friends while songs echoed at night around campfires. It was hard to believe that only a few months earlier, this world had been silent and dying. Captain Arden often stood at the top of the rebuilt tower looking over the city lights below her eyes. Filled with quiet pride, she knew they had done something no one else had dared to do. They had given hope to those who were forgotten, but deep. In space, others were watching Council patrols still pass near Rhinar Prime. They took secret recordings and sent them back to their leaders showing humans and Rhinar working together. The images made the Council uneasy. For centuries they had ruled, by fear and by silence, and now this new alliance was spreading light where darkness had been. They feared that other abandoned worlds might call for human help and that their control would weaken. So they sent spies in disguise pretending to be traitors. They came to the surface smiling and offering goods, but their eyes studied everything. Every wall, every tool, every word. They reported that the humans were building not only homes, but friendship and unity. And that frightened the Council even more. Meanwhile, life went on peacefully on the surface. Thomas, the mechanic, finished building a small power generator that could run on solar light and scraps of metal. He showed it to the Rhinar children, and they clapped in excitement. Little Erie helped him test it, and when it worked, she shouted that the sun itself was smiling at them. Captain Arden smiled when she saw them and said, "This is what the future looks like. Simple hands doing great things together." Halrin, the Rhinar leader, agreed, but he warned her that peace never stays long in a galaxy ruled by fear. She nodded. She knew he was right. One morning the sky trembled. A strange ship entered orbit, larger than any Council patrol. Its black surface reflected no light. It was not a human ship nor a Rhinar design. It belonged to the High Council fleet. It sent a message ordering all humans to leave Rhinar Prime within 2 days, or face consequences. Captain Arden gathered her crew and read the message aloud. Her voice calm, but firm, she asked if anyone wanted to return to safety. No one moved. Not one hand rose. They all stood in silence, their faces showing the same decision they had made long ago. No one would leave the Rhinar behind. The Rhinar people heard of the threat, and panic spread through the city. They remembered the wars, they remembered being abandoned, and they feared this time the humans would also run away. But the humans did not pack their things. Instead, they built more shelters, brought more supplies, and prepared for what was coming. Captain Arden sent a message to the Council ship saying, "We will not leave these people. They are under our protection. If you wish to harm them, you will have to harm us too." The Council ship did not reply for many hours. Then a cold voice answered, saying that defiance would lead to punishment. But the humans ignored it and continued working. That night the Rhinar gathered around the human campfires burned high and warm. The stars looked close enough to touch. Halrin stood before the crowd and spoke, his voice steady. He said that his people had lived in fear for too long, and that if the Council came again, they would not hide. They would stand beside the humans because the humans had stood beside them. Captain Arden listened quietly. Then she placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "We came here to help, not to rule. We are your friends, and we will face whatever comes together." The crowd cheered softly and many wept. In the days that followed, the humans began to train the Rhinar to defend themselves. They did not give them weapons of war, but taught them how to protect their homes, how to build barriers, and how to signal for help without being detected. Thomas and Erie worked together building small warning beacons around the city. They laughed even while working, but deep inside they were both afraid. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew that the council would not stop with words. The black ship in orbit began sending small drones. To scan the surface, the humans disabled them one by one without attacking. They only jammed their signals, sending a quiet message of resistance. The council saw it as open defiance and sent 2 more ships to the system. But when they arrived, they found not a weak world, but one united humans and Reinar standing together, their lights shining like stars on the surface. The council ship stayed at a distance, unwilling to fire on civilians, while the humans broadcasted a message to every open channel saying the galaxy forgot them, but we did not. If you hear this and your world was left behind, know that you are not alone anymore. Those words spread faster than the council could block them, and soon, other forgotten worlds began to send their signals too. On Reinar Prime, life continued under the shadow of the council ships, but fear slowly turned into pride. The Reinar built new schools and farms using human designs. Captain Arden and Halloran signed an agreement of friendship, making Reinar Prime the first world to officially join a new alliance, not ruled by the council. It was a small act, but it shook the galaxy more than any battle could, because it showed that trust could be stronger than control. Then, one evening, a small group of council agents tried to land secretly on the planet, pretending to be refugees, but the humans caught them before they could cause harm instead of punishment. Captain Arden let them go unharmed. She said, "Tell your leaders, we are not their enemies, we only wish to save lives." The agents left confused because they expected hatred, but found kindness instead. When they returned to their masters, they spoke of the strange human courage that made no sense to them. And slowly, even among the council, doubts began to grow. Erie continued to follow Thomas everywhere. She had grown taller and stronger. She could fix small machines on her own one night while watching the stars. She asked him what would happen if the council attacked. He looked at her and said, "Then we stand together." She smiled and said, "I am not afraid anymore." He nodded and said that was the greatest thing he had ever heard from her. Weeks later, a storm hit Reinar Prime. Lightning tore through the sky and winds howled across the plains. Many of the shelters were damaged, but the humans and Reinar worked side by side through the night, fixing roofs, saving supplies, and comforting each other. When the morning came and the storm passed, the city was still standing, and everyone alive. It felt like a sign that together they could survive anything. After the storm, the humans found strange debris in the mountains, pieces of metal from old war machines left from centuries ago. Captain Arden realized that the planet still hid dangers and ordered her team to clear the area. While doing so, they discovered something unexpected, an old underground bunker full of ancient Reinar technology long forgotten. Halloran was amazed. He said this could help his people rebuild faster. But Captain Arden warned that such power could also bring the council's attention. They decided to keep it secret for now and use it only for peaceful rebuilding. As days turned into months, the bond between the two species grew stronger. They shared not only work, but culture. Humans taught the Reinar songs and games, while the Reinar taught the humans how to read their old language and understand their history. Every evening, the city lights glowed brighter and the once ruined planet began to look alive again. High above in space, the council finally decided to withdraw their ships for the moment. They feared open war with the humans, whose numbers and influence were growing. But they vowed to return one day stronger and more prepared. On Reinar Prime, the people did not care about those distant threats. They were too busy living again. Captain Arden stood on the same hill where she once landed and watched children, human and Reinar, playing together in the fields. She smiled, knowing that no matter what came next, something had already changed forever. In the heart of the city, the humans placed a small stone with words written in both languages. It said, "We were strangers once, but now we stand together beside you always." And as the sun set and the lights came on across the valley, those words became more than a promise. They became the spirit of the world. Months passed, and the bond between humans and Reinar grew stronger than ever. The city that was once a graveyard now shone with bright lights and laughter. Every night, fires burned along the streets and people sang songs in two voices. Human and Reinar mixed together. Captain Arden often walked among them, smiling at the sight of new life she knew they had created. Something beautiful. Something that could not be undone no matter how much the Council tried to control the galaxy. More ships from Earth had arrived, bringing doctors, engineers, and teachers. They came not with weapons, but with hands ready to work. The Reinar built schools beside human camps, and both children learned side by side new words, new hopes and new dreams. But far away in the Council chambers, the sight of this growing alliance caused anger. The leaders saw the reports and called humans. Dangerous, they said humanity was spreading chaos by breaking old laws and giving the forgotten worlds dangerous ideas. They feared that soon other species would rise and refuse to bow to them. They decided that Reinar Prime must be made an example, so they began planning a blockade around the planet, cutting off trade and communication. But the humans were ready. They had built their own network of small satellites that could send signals even through interference. Their voices still reached out to other worlds, spreading the message that no one should be left behind. One morning, Captain Arden woke to the sound of alarm. Her officers reported that a large council fleet had entered the system, more than 20 ships moving fast toward Reinar Prime. She ordered the humans to go into defensive positions, though their ships were not built for war. They formed a line in orbit, shielding the planet with their bodies. The Reinar watched from the surface with fear and pride. They knew that their human friends were now risking everything for them. Halrin called a meeting in the Great Hall of the new city. He told his people that they would not hide this time. They would stand together. He said we were left to die once, but not again. In space, the Council sent a message demanding surrender. They said the humans had violated laws and interfered with restricted worlds. Captain Arden replied calmly. She said, "We did what you would not do. We saved lives. We built peace. If that is a crime, then we accept it. But we will not leave these people to die." The Council ships moved closer, trying to scare them. But the humans did not move. Every crew member on every ship stood ready not to fight, but to hold the line. Their signal went across, the stars saying, "If you strike them, you strike us." The galaxy watched as the standoff continued. Many worlds that had once stayed silent began to whisper about the courage of the humans. Even some inside the Council began to question their leaders. Why was saving lives a crime? Why was compassion forbidden? The old power of fear began to weaken, and hope began to spread faster than light on Reinar Prime. The people prepared for the worst, but also for the best. They built shelters and stored food. But they also kept singing their songs, refusing to let fear rule them again. Then something unexpected happened. A small fleet of alien ships from distant colonies appeared near the system. They were not human, but they came because they had heard the message of hope. They sent a simple transmission saying, "We stand with those who care." The Council could not believe it. Small worlds that had always obeyed now refused to follow orders. More ships arrived from other forgotten planets. Each one, small but together, they formed a wall of light around Reinar Prime. The humans watched in awe. Captain Arden said quietly, "Maybe the galaxy is finally waking up." The Council fleet hesitated. They had the power to destroy everything. But they also knew that an attack on so many united worlds would start a fire they could not stop in their silence. The humans and Reinar continued to rebuild. They planted new forests on the dry lands. They restored old towers and filled them with life. Children of both species played together under the suns, and sometimes they looked at the sky and asked why the stars seemed brighter than before. Thomas the mechanic always said, "Maybe the stars are happy." 2 weeks passed and no attack came. The Council ships stayed in orbit but did not fire. They only watched from a distance. Captain Arden used the time to strengthen communication between all the allied worlds. They shared food, medicine, and knowledge, creating a new network that worked outside the Council's control. Slowly, a new idea was growing, one that no one could stop, an alliance built not on fear or power, but on care. One day, a Council ambassador arrived under a white flag. He came alone and landed on the surface. He was an old alien with gray skin and tired eyes. When he met Captain Arden, he said that the Council was not pleased but also not ready for war. He asked her why humans risked so much for strangers. She answered simply, because no one else would. He looked at her for a long time and said perhaps the galaxy needed to be reminded what it means to be alive. He returned to his ship without making any threats. The council ships soon began to leave one by one until only the stars remained. When the last one disappeared, the people of Reinar Prime cheered. They had survived again, not through weapons or strength, but through unity. Halrin stood before the crowd and thanked the humans. He said, "Our world breathes again because of you. But more than that, our hearts live again." Captain Arden replied that the Reinar had saved themselves. Humans had only reminded them of their strength together. They planted a tree at the center of the city as a symbol of peace. It had roots from Reinar soil and leaves from earth. Soil brought by the first human ship, its branches spread wide and strong, reaching toward the sky. Life on Reinar Prime grew better every day. Markets opened again and ships from friendly worlds came to trade. The city that had once been forgotten became a place of learning and healing. The humans did not stay as rulers. They lived among the Reinar, as equals, teaching and learning, both sides changing each other. Thomas continued building machines that made life easier, and Ari, who was now almost grown, worked beside him. She had become one of the best engineers on the planet. Together, they built new power systems that ran on clean energy. She often said that she wanted every child to have light in their homes, like she once saw in the human camp. As time passed, more human ships joined the new alliance, each bringing help to another world. That had been left behind. Earth became a name known not for war but for kindness. Captain Arden sometimes received messages from those new missions. They all began the same way: "We heard you." The same words that once saved the Reinar now echoed across the stars, bringing hope to thousands. But even in peace there were challenges. Some old council members tried to stir fear, spreading lies that humans wanted control. But the truth was too clear to deny. People could see the difference with their own eyes. Where humans went, life returned. Where they helped, people stood again. The galaxy had changed and there was no turning back. One night as the twin suns set, Captain Arden sat beside Halrin on the same hill where they first spoke. He told her that his people would remember the humans forever. She smiled and said, "Just promise to help others the way we helped you." He agreed and said, "We will. When someone calls for help, we will answer." "As you did," she nodded and said, "Then my work here is done." But Halrin shook his head and said, "Your work has just begun." As stars filled the sky, Captain Arden looked up and saw the faint lights of human ships preparing to leave. She felt both proud and sad. This world no longer needed saving. It was alive again. But she knew there were others out there still waiting, forgotten by the galaxy. She whispered softly, "We will find you too." And as the wind carried her words through the night, it sounded like a promise, written across the stars. The next journey began soon after the last ship left Reinar Prime. Captain Arden looked at the stars and thought about all the other worlds still lost in the dark. She knew there were more like the Reinar planets where the council had turned away and people had been left to die. So she sent a message to Earth asking for volunteers and help. She did not promise riches or power. She only said there are still voices out there, waiting to be heard. Within weeks, ships began to arrive from Earth carrying people who wanted to make a difference. They were not soldiers or explorers, but farmers, doctors, teachers, and builders, all with the same purpose: to help those who had been forgotten. Together they formed a fleet and called it the Light Path. It was not large or powerful, but it carried hope. Each ship was designed for aid, not war, filled with supplies, tools, and clean energy systems. Captain Arden named her new ship Horizon because she believed there was always another light waiting just beyond it. They left Reinar Prime with blessings and tears. The Reinar people gathered at the launch field and waved as the ships rose into the sky. Halrin watched until the last light disappeared and said softly, "May their path never end." The first world they reached was called Tarvin 9. It was once rich and green, but now it was covered in dust storms and ruins. No one had visited it for more than a century because it had been marked as unstable by the council. When the humans landed, they found small groups of survivors living in caves, hiding from the winds. Their skin was pale and their eyes wide from living in darkness. When they saw the humans, they were afraid, thinking new masters had come. But Captain Arden stepped forward and said, "We came to help, not to rule. We came because no one else would." Her calm voice and kind face slowly made them lower their weapons. The humans built shelters that could stand against the storms. They repaired old water systems and brought food and medicine for the Sick, the people of Tarvin 9 began to trust them, and for the first time in generations they walked under the open sky. The children laughed and touched the metal walls of the human ships, calling them stars that had fallen to save them. One old man told Captain Arden that he once believed the galaxy had forgotten them. Now he said maybe the galaxy remembered through you. As the months passed, the humans worked hard, but they faced many struggles. The storms damaged equipment and food supplies, ran low, but no one gave up. They shared everything they had, even when it was not enough. Tomas, who had once repaired machines on Reinar Prime, now became the heart of the camp. He fixed broken tools using scraps and built windshields from old metal. Parts Airy, who had stayed behind on Reinar Prime, sent them messages of encouragement and designs for stronger shelters. Every time a message came, the crew felt like they were not alone. One night, while the winds howled outside the camp, Captain Arden sat by a small fire writing her report. She did not write about machines or numbers. She wrote about the people, how they smiled even when hungry, how they helped each other. Even when tired, she said in her report, "Hope is stronger than any weapon. It keeps us alive when nothing else can." But not everyone in the galaxy liked what they were doing. The Council had begun to lose control over many systems. As more worlds followed the example of Reinar Prime, they sent spies to watch the humans and gather proof to accuse them of breaking the law. One of those spies, named Varen, landed on Tarvin 9 pretending to be a traitor. He watched how people loved the humans and how they worked together. He sent reports back to the Council saying the humans are dangerous because they make others believe they do not need us anymore. But as days passed, Varen began to question his orders. He saw children laughing and people rebuilding. He remembered his own homeworld, which the Council had abandoned. Long ago, he started to wonder if the humans were right. One day, Thomas caught Varen trying to send another report instead of arresting him. He invited him to sit by the fire. They talked for hours. Thomas told him how humanity had also suffered once, and how they learned that only by standing together could they survive. He said, "We do not come to destroy. We come to heal something in Varen's heart." Changed that night, he stopped sending reports and started helping. Instead, soon, he became one of them, teaching the humans how to survive the storms better. He later told Captain Arden that he wanted to make things right. She smiled and said, "Then you already have." After a year, Tarvin 9 was alive again. Crops grew under protective domes and water ran clean through the valleys. The people built a monument from the broken parts of old machines at its base. They wrote simple words to those who came when no one else did. "We remember you," when the Light Path fleet prepared to leave. The people stood in long lines, waving and holding lights in their hands. The wind carried their voices as they shouted, "Thank you and safe travels." Captain Arden's eyes filled with tears, as she promised they would never be forgotten. The next destination was even more dangerous, a planet called Cadris, where war had once destroyed everything. The land was filled with old weapons and the air was toxic, but sensors showed signs of life, so the humans decided to go. They wore suits and masks and landed near a broken city. Inside the ruins, they found survivors, small and weak but alive. They had been living underground, breathing filtered air and waiting for someone to come. They thought the world above was cursed, but when they saw the humans, they fell to their knees, calling them angels. Captain Arden told them, "We are not angels. We are just people who care." The humans built clean air systems and helped the survivors move above ground. They cleared the toxic soil and started planting again, though it was hard. The people worked with courage. The humans taught them how to build safe homes and how to make medicine from local plants. Soon flowers started to grow again in places that had been dead for centuries. One child ran through the fields, laughing, saying, "Look, the world is breathing again," and everyone cried when they heard it. Meanwhile, news of these actions spread through the stars. Worlds that once stayed silent now sent messages offering help. Old enemies began to talk again because of the example humans set. The Council tried to stop the spread, but they were too late. The idea had already taken root across the galaxy that no one should be left alone. That kindness was stronger than fear. One day, Captain Arden received a message from Halrin on Reinar Prime. He said that the Council was finally sending envoys not to threaten, but to discuss peace. He said, "Maybe the time has come for a new beginning for all of us." She smiled and said, "The stars are listening at last." As the Light Path Fleet continued their journey more and more. Ships joined them, each from a different world, each carrying their own story of survival and hope. There were even some from the council worlds themselves, people who had left their positions to join the movement. They said, "We cannot follow old orders anymore. We choose the path of light together." They formed the largest aid fleet the galaxy had ever seen, not built for war but for healing. Everywhere they went, they planted the same tree as on Rhinar, prime roots from one world, leaves from another. Each tree a living sign that unity was possible in time. Those trees became sacred across many worlds. Travelers would visit them and tell stories of the humans who came from far away to help when the galaxy had lost its heart. One evening, as the horizon moved through quiet space, Captain Arden looked at the stars and thought of Earth. She wondered if people back home knew what they had started. She recorded a message and sent it through the deep channels. She said to all who hear this, wherever you are, remember that the smallest act of kindness can change the course of stars, one world at a time. We are proof of that we are not heroes. We are just humans. The stars outside glowed brighter as if listening to her words, and she knew their journey was far from over. Somewhere out there, another world still waited, forgotten and silent, and she promised that the light path would find it too, for humanity had made a vow to the galaxy, a vow that echoed from Rhinar Prime to every corner of the stars. We will never leave you again. Years had passed since the humans first landed on Rhinar Prime. The galaxy had changed in ways no one had imagined. Worlds that had once been silent were now alive with trade music and laughter, and everywhere people spoke of the humans who came when no one else did. Their fleet, the light path, had become a symbol of unity. Their ships were known not for weapons but for light that healed and mended, and every world that joined them added something new to that light. There were no leaders, no kings, only people who wanted to help. Captain Arden, now older, sat in the command chair of her ship Horizon and looked at the stars with quiet eyes. Her hair had turned silver, and her hands bore marks of long years of work, but her spirit was still bright. She thought of the first time she had seen Rhinar Prime broken and dying. She remembered the faces of Halrin, Thomas, and Aerie, and all the others who had walked beside her through dust storms and endless nights. She smiled because she knew their journey had not been in vain. On Earth, people finally began to understand. The full story news channels and storytellers spoke of the light path and how humanity had once again reminded the stars what compassion truly meant. Children learned about Rhinar Prime in school and built small models of the human and Rhinar monument that stood side by side in the capital city. Teachers told them, "This is who we are. We stand beside others when all else turn away." One day a message came from Rhinar Prime to Captain Arden. It was from Halrin, who had become a respected leader among his people. His message was full of warmth and pride. He said, "The trees we planted with your people have grown strong. Their roots reach deep into the soil, and their leaves shine at night, as if holding the stars themselves. Our children play under them and tell stories about the humans who came from far away and said, 'Beside you always.'" He invited her to return and see how far they had come. When the Horizon arrived at Rhinar Prime, the planet looked nothing like the place she had left years ago. It was green, and alive rivers flowed clear, and cities shone with light built by both human and Rhinar hands. When she stepped down from her ship, the people welcomed her with songs. The streets were lined with flowers and banners that showed the symbol of two hands joined together. Halrin came forward and bowed before her, but she quickly lifted him up and said, "We are equals, we always were." He smiled and said, "We know, but we bow not to power. We bow to kindness." They walked together through the city, and she saw how humans and Rhinar worked side by side in every corner. There were schools, hospitals, farms, and workshops, each filled with both species learning from each other. She saw a group of children building small drones to clean rivers, and they ran up to her saying, "Look, we made these from old human parts." She laughed and told them, "You have done better than us, for you made hope out of scraps." Halrin showed her the great hall where the new council met. It was not the old galactic council, but a new one made from all races, big and small. It was called the Concord of Stars. Their only rule was simple: no world should ever be left alone again. When the meeting began, representatives from many planets stood to speak one by one. They told their stories of how the light path had helped them, Some had been dying worlds. Some had been torn by war, but all had been healed by the same thing. Not power, not machines, but care. One elder said before the humans came, we had forgotten how. To look beyond ourselves, they reminded us that life is not about who is strongest, but who stands beside the weakest. And that day they voted to make the light path a permanent part of the Concord. Their ships would continue to travel forever, bringing aid and unity to any world that needed it. After the meeting, the people gathered in the great square where a new monument was to be revealed. It was made of metal and stone from every world. The light path had touched at its base was a simple phrase. Carved in many languages, they were left to die by the galaxy, until humanity stood and said, beside you always. When Captain Arden read the words, she felt tears fill her eyes. Halloran stood beside her and said, you gave us back our future. She answered, no, you gave us yours. That night there was a celebration. Lights filled the sky and music from dozens of worlds blended into one harmony. Children danced around fires and humans, and Reinar sang together for the first time. Captain Arden sat with her. Crewen watched in silence. Thomas, who was older now, sat beside her and said, do you think this will last? She looked at the sky where the stars seemed to listen and said, it will last as long as someone remembers why we began. Later she walked to the edge of the city alone and looked out over the quiet fields. The wind was soft and carried the scent of new flowers. She thought of all the worlds they had visited, Tarvin 9, where laughter had returned, Cadris, where the ground had healed, and countless others. She knew there would still be pain and loss in the galaxy. But she also knew something had changed forever. The idea that had started with one ship and one act of kindness had become a fire that no one could put out. The next morning, she received a message from Earth. They wanted her to return for an honor ceremony. But she refused, gently saying, I have already been honored every time I see life where there once was death. I have enough medals in my heart. The horizon will stay. On its path there are still worlds waiting, and she turned her ship back toward the stars. Her crew smiled because they knew this was how it was meant to be, as the ship moved through space. Captain Arden stood on the bridge looking at the endless night. The stars seemed closer now, as if they knew her name. Varen, who had once been the spy, now served as her advisor. He said, I used to think the galaxy was too big to change. She answered, it still is. But that is why we keep going. We do not need to change everything, only enough to make it better, and that is enough. The horizon soon received another signal from a small world at the edge of known space. It was weak and broken, but it carried a voice saying, please, we are fading. Captain Arden looked at her crew and said, set a course. The engines roared softly and the ship turned toward the unknown. No one asked how far or how dangerous. They simply nodded because they already knew the answer. Wherever there was need, humanity would go. Alway. On Reinar Prime, the monument stood tall under the twin moons. Children gathered around it every evening to hear the story of the humans who refused to turn away. Old and young repeated the words beside you, always like a prayer. The trees planted long ago had spread across the land, glowing softly at night, so that even from orbit they looked like rivers of light, and travelers who passed by would say that Reinar Prime was a world born again from the kindness of strangers. Years later, when Captain Arden was gone, her ship was found drifting near a nebula. Inside it was her final message, recorded in a calm and steady voice. She said, if anyone finds this, remember that we are not the center of the stars, but a small part of their light, and every act of care, no matter how small, keeps that light alive. We stood beside others, not because they needed us, but because we needed them too. Without kindness, we are empty. With it, we are infinite. The message ended, and for a long moment the galaxy was silent. But silence did not last, for ships of many races began to repeat her words as a greeting. Beside you always became the pledge of the conquered. Every new captain of the Light Path spoke it before each mission, and so her legacy lived on in every act of help, in every hand that reached out, and in every life saved across the endless stars. And so the story of humanity and Reinar Prime became more than history. It became the heart of a galaxy that had once forgotten how to care. Now it remembered forever, bound by the promise that started with one small act of kindness and carried by a voice that whispered across the universe, beside you always.